Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The Daily Ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, directed by John Ford, Django by Sergio Corbucci, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Terry Gilliam. We have newly released The Last Voyage of the Demeter, directed by Andre Obradel, and finally Gran Turismo, directed by Neil Blomkamp. It's going to be a great show, folks, so stay tuned and enjoy. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
How's it going, Tom?
It's going okay on my end. How was your week of movies, man?
Week was all right. I feel like we had some highlights in the week.
Okay.
Not in theaters, but you know, it was an all right week. Happy to be closing, of course, a disjointed Western month. But some two powerhouse films.
Powerhouse films, and kind of like a big moment for the Daily Ratings. 96 episodes. Our first John Wayne film ever.
Right.
First John Ford film ever.
Yeah.
Kind of a big moment. I thought so anyway.
Yeah, definitely a big moment for Woody. But yeah, it's a powerhouse Western that we can start off with, and I was just happy to return to it. I mean, it's just one of those that, of course, we've seen together, and returing to it
a few years ago, yeah. So I watched it fresh as well.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely be getting into that a little bit. I'm excited to talk about that film.
Yeah.
We managed to watch that last week, which is nice. Well, yeah, we'll talk more about some other stuff. One thing I wanted to touch on was right off the bat was Gran Turismo.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It was originally scheduled for August 11th, which is when you saw it.
Yep.
They then pulled it and pushed it back to the 25th.
Right.
However, I don't know if it was a mistake or if they kept it for a fan early watch. You watched it on the 11th.
Yes. They still had like an early release.
Right. I don't think a lot of theaters did it at all. Barely any theaters had it. It didn't even list in really box office registries.
Oh, really?
Meaning it was in such small amount of theaters that it didn't register.
Wow.
And they calculate stuff that made $1,000.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So you got a very special early screening of the movie.
This was like The Whale last year.
Very much so.
How to sneak it in. Yeah.
So this is a true early. It's nice that we can get this out before it actually comes out for the masses.
For sure. Absolutely.
So that was fun to find.
Yeah.
Because then even if I wanted to see it, I was like, wait a second, what? This isn't recorded? Because I texted you and be like, oh, that comes out the 25th, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I'm going to go see it.
Yeah, I think it's right now.
So that's kind of cool.
Well, cool, but also a kind of a foreboding for things to come, just with pushes. So we had a release we were going to cover for Gary Gray that was coming out on Netflix, got pushed to like January or something like that. So
it's going to be weird. I don't know. I think it might bode well, though, as far as indie films for us.
Sure.
They might just get a naturally bigger push a little bit. I had it in the newsletter, the lineups for the New York Film Festival and TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival, came out. And man, TIFF has like an ungodly amount of films coming
big.
out. But some huge, like Chris Pine is directing his first.
Oh, really?
And Viggo Mortensen is going to be directing his first, which is cool. And
news that only you would pay attention to.
But like Michael Keaton is directing himself as a hitman.
Oh, okay.
So there's going to be, I think, good smaller pictures that maybe we can get our fingers on a little bit.
Sure.
Which would be great to kind of fill in whatever this weirdness is happening.
Yeah, and I feel like that's probably just a rising attitude with these big blockbusters that have so much hype, and then they don't. It's almost impossible for them to live up to the budget.
I know, and now and to your point of, we'll see how it bodes for us in the future, even the making of the films now.
Yeah.
So we'll see how late 2024, mid 2024 even is.
Sure.
The Tron director because Tron 3 is going to be coming out.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
And Tron 3 director, all he did was like tweet something saying like, hey, we were supposed to be filming today. It's supposed to be our first day of shooting. And now 150 people are laid off, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then he just urged all parties to please go back to the negotiating table and like figure this out soon.
Right.
And they just torched him online for being like a scab and being...
just encouraging them working together?
Yeah, exactly. It's like everybody's calmed down a little bit. I want Tron 3.
Yeah. I want Tron 3. Okay. That's going on your gravestone.
Yeah.
Because it's never going to happen.
So, all right, Pilgrim, let's start. Let's jump right into it. This is a big film, folks. This is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. It's directed by John Ford. This came out, I think, what I just say, in 1962?
Yeah.
It surprised me that it was a 62 film and not 50s. The fact that it was black and white, I thought it was John Wayne was when he was a little bit younger or something like that.
Right.
That's the only thing that surprised me. This is probably my fourth or fifth time watching the film. It's highly regarded. It's always in the list of either top 5 or top 10 Westerns of all time.
Yep.
It's always highly regarded as John Wayne's one of his top probably 3 best performances. I'm excited to get into it. I'm interested in hearing why this is the first John Wayne film or why this kind of was scratching an itch this week for you.
Sure.
But let's get into it. Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Finn, how did you like it? Why'd you watch it?
Well, it's a great movie, and folks, we're ending Western Month on a very high note because this is easily my favorite from the legend John Wayne, and I think
so far.
You're right.
So far.
Tom's always the holdout for Mr. Wayne. I think in the theme of going for the throat on top westerns, in this disjointed Western month, I think that's where Liberty Valance kind of made the list for me. On top of me just wanting to watch a good movie this week,
right?
And watching good movies to supplement maybe some meh movies to it. So for years and years and years, Tom has tried to introduce me to more John Wayne films than I can count, folks. I mean, he is in my ear.
Much to Vin's dismay and my disappointment after Vin watching the films.
Yeah, right. Some good, some bad, and some might rob my credibility in front of one of my favorite directors of all time. Tom, would you like to tell the Searchers story or a little bit of the insight of...
Basically, on almost all lists of best westerns ever, basically the first film on there is essentially The Searchers.
Right.
It's pretty much always, if it's not the first, it's the second.
Yeah.
The Searchers, directed by John Ford. It's John Wayne in a kind of a morally gray character.
Yep.
It's an epic movie. It is Martin Scorsese's one of his favorite movies. At one point, it was his favorite movie.
Right.
The irony that Vin hated the film.
I hate The Searchers.
I have made Vin watch it 3 times.
Oh, right.
Thinking me, like an idiot, always going back to the well. Maybe he's grown on it. Maybe something's changed.
I think that's the morbid curiosity for me as well. Like, I want to like it. Scorsese says it's his favorite film. Like, I feel like there's something wrong with me. I'm having and
it's such a
projections from this.
It's in multiple interviews. He says it, and in his Morton Heavy, he talks so fast. And he's just, the best.
He says it like so matter of fact. Like, there's no arguing with it.
Now, I mean, he says some other stuff during the other interviews, but he loves this film, and so many other people love this film. So, for instance, Steven Spielberg will often go back to John Ford films, and big time in The Searchers.
Who
is the Akira
Kurosawa?
Yeah, huge John Ford fan. Also loves The Searchers.
Yeah.
So.
We'll talk about Kurosawa actually in Django a little bit because I feel like that there's echoings of that. So,
but basically, my big thing, I'm always slightly heartbroken. I'm like the girlfriend that gets always beat up, but always goes running back to the.
But I'm gonna be the one beat up if I ever get the chance to talk to Martin Scorsese.
Yes. Now, but overall about John Wayne, it's very tough. He lives in the mid 60s to maybe mid 70s if we're lucky.
Yeah.
But he's very much a high 50s, mid 60s kind of guy for you.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, even me, if we go through 20 John Wayne films, I mean, he's in over hundreds of pictures.
Oh, for sure.
And so much before 39 when he was just extras, or they had those, what they were called 3-day movies. They would shoot him in 3 days, low budget back then. So he's in so much. I probably only seen maybe 25 pictures of John Wayne. I've seen some of them 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 times. Literally. So we could go ahead and sit down and watch all of them. I wouldn't be surprised if the vast majority are 2 shoes for me.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they're all 2 shoes, 2 laces in my heart. It's you know what I mean? It's one of those things for
Right.
me.
This is your sci-fi. You have the leanings.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right.
The leanings.
So, sorry, that's enough chit chat. Let's kind of get
Listen, that's the anytime John Wayne is coming up, I'm immediately thinking of how The Searchers and Scorsese and me are at odds, basically. So, but yeah, back to Liberty Valance. Liberty Valance is a different beast. One, it came out during a time that black and white films were running side by side with color films. So stylistically, I think this positions itself differently. This was not really nominated for a lot of Oscars or anything like that. I think one was just costume design, but I think at the time, this could have gotten pigeonholed a little bit because it was maybe doing black and white when in the very same year we get West Side Story, which was such a color explosion on screen.
It's another reason why it surprised me when I found out it was 62. I mean, I'm sure I knew that in the past, but watching it again, I knew it was black and white and everything like that, of course.
Yeah.
But it's just like, man, 62.
Yeah.
It was strange that he went with black and white.
Yeah, and I don't know. I like the choice personally.
Me too.
But I think there's things that maybe are puzzle pieces for why this wasn't maybe recognized as positively back in the day. And why I think it also stands out for that reason in modern day watching this.
Okay.
So the inclusion of Jimmy Stewart, I feel, raises this up a bar in comparison to the talent we see in Westerns coming out in the late 50s and early 60s. And we have film history here with another reunion with director John Ford, who gave John Wayne arguably his first iconic cowboy role in the 1939 classic Stagecoach. Mm-hmm. So having these together is a magic mix for why I feel like Liberty Valance is cut from a little bit of a different cloth than just a normal Western. Even if a Western would try to do a similar story and hit on similar themes, I feel like execution and what goes into that execution, the ingredients of Liberty Valance, kind of is why it's a cut above, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely is. In so many ways, I feel like this is a boiled down and an essence of a story or a film, and at the same time, I think it's elevated at the same time.
Sure.
So people look at Westerns now and they're cute or they're not as good, they can't hold up to anything because they're so simplified, kind of. And that can damage a film. I think this is simplified, but in the best ways possible.
Yeah.
In the best ways you can say that. And just to go back to the black and white thing,
Sure.
where you said overall you think it was a good choice. At first, when I'm like, 62, black and white, okay. Then you watch it, and it's like, oh, very purposely done.
Yes.
The stylistic choices made in the film to highlight this needed to be black and white.
Yeah.
Some of the shots were just beautiful.
Absolutely. And it really does pay off for it.
Yeah.
I really do think, and I'll return to this probably multiple times, but every ounce of this film plays into its theming. That even ties into what you're saying with, it could be seen as simplistic, and maybe in modern day it would be something that it would be even get critiqued for, but that is not to say that every ounce of this film isn't fine-tuned and lasered in on what the theme it's trying to get across. We begin with Stewart's character, Ransom Stoddard. Again, we got some weird Western names this month. Old and gray and returning to a town to attend a funeral of a mystery acquaintance. That man is Tom Donovan, or Donovan? John Wayne's character. So we'll refer to him as Stewart and Wayne. And the story plays out in a flashback of how these two met. Basically, in that flashback, the outlaw Liberty Valance harasses the same town years ago and equally brings our two characters together while also placing them on opposite sides of the fence on how to deal with this threat. And the film is really an examination of those viewpoints set in this Western setting. Folks, I really do love how unique of film this is for a Western. Stewart plays a lawyer that is principled and educated, but slightly naive. A tenderfoot, as Wayne puts it, and largely doesn't belong here.
Tenderfoot is such a good name,
right? Yeah, and you can just hear Wayne saying it too. Like, it's such a John Wayne thing to say. John Wayne also says Pilgrim in this, which
a lot.
I feel
this is where the main Pilgrim stuff.
Yeah,
this is where the memes are born. I think
because I think for a while, during the years of us tackling John Wayne films, I think I always joked like, when does he say Pilgrim? And then this is the one that he says it. So. But it's great. But this, again, like with so many things that we'll talk about on this review, simple in concept, excellent in execution. This naive, upstanding lawyer type that Stewart plays, it acts as fresh eyes for the audience, but it's especially useful because of how loose the laws are in this town. We don't really get a date. We don't even get really a name for the town, if I'm correct. I think it's just a nameless town.
That's a great... No, it's got it. No, it definitely is. I think no, yeah, because the paper.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Town, yeah.
That's right. Yes.
But it's funny. It didn't have too much importance because we both can't remember.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. But it's particularly lawless. I mean, I would say it's going a little bit of an extra mile into the lawless West and this frontier aspect.
Yeah,
to
definitely.
It.
Yeah.
But it positions our conflict perfectly, and I really mean perfectly. Many Westerns concern themselves with justice, but it's only at the end of a hot six shooter. Stewart has no interest in that type of justice, and as a character, he is contrasted flawlessly by Wayne's cowboy that has seen it all. Again, sounds simple, but in execution, every ounce of this film is fine-tuned to have this kind of opposite side of the train tracks mentality, while also progressing the town towards dealing with these problems, mainly Liberty Valance. I would say the theme for me, at least, and I'd love to have your thoughts, Tom, is civilization versus the frontier. More and more, Stewart's character is trying to bring in voting to the town, education to the town, and not that Wayne's character is against that, but he just knows that in practicality, things have to work differently on the frontier, and that's kind of our conflict, that it's a conflict in ideology, basically.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Not in the back of my head while listening or watching and taking notes, kind of. My big thing was how I kind of said it was boiled down as an essence, but in the best way possible. It simplified things.
Sure.
And to that, very fine-tuned. I was taking it down. It boiled down the nature of man.
Yeah.
Where we have complete morally good character, morally absolute moral bad character, and then a character where finally we get a morally absolute gray character.
Sure.
Always slipping back and forth between good and evil, kind of. And that's how I kind of boiled the film down to.
Interesting.
But at the same time, it is a constant theme for the film as far as frontier versus new age or new, because even in the second plot of the film, it's, are we going to be a territory or are we going to be state? Do we want statehood? So to your point, it could very much be that as well.
Yeah, there's a moment that Stewart is educating some of the town, and he has written on a chalkboard, education is the basis of law and order. And I just feel like him trying to bring that is the center of the conflict. It's very much a starring role for Stewart and Wayne, but I feel like the characters operate as a town together, and there's a lot of side characters in that get a lot of time to shine and equally have so much importance to that theme. Like I said, I mean, I really think this is a 10 out of 10 script. I mean, every ounce of this script is just so laser focused on examining that theme, and most of all in its characters. Like I praised 1993's Jurassic Park, character writing never wavers, not once. Stewart operates like a lawyer constantly.
Yeah.
He's, his arc is basically not picking up the gun. As far as Wayne's character, making sure that he stays true to his cowboy ways. I mean, it's not that he's against the changes that Stewart is bringing to the town.
Right.
But it's just he's on the opposite side of the tracks. And he operates like that.
And trying to be a realist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a hardened realist, basically.
And I think to compound with your thoughts about like the 50s, I wish this good of writing was in more 50s films. I would be all right with the moral focus or the lesson that it has to tell, or even just the kind of the thought of, hey, people have different experiences and different perspectives because of that. I feel like a lot of 50s films try to do that. Liberty Valance nails it, though.
Yeah, and I will say, just with Ford and Wayne working so much together, and in the 50s and everything like that, I love that in this film, Wayne is okay with taking a step back. John Ford is okay with not having such a light on John Wayne, because there's a lot of shared dialogue, shared time on screen with these characters, between Vera Miles to the main journalist. It's Shinbone, by the way.
Yeah,
right?
Shinbone, that's it. That's the town.
But to the newspaper man, it gets way more than just a few lines.
Absolutely.
And then the marshal, of course, as well, who people recognize from Stagecoach also.
Yeah.
And everyone, and even Liberty Valance gets a decent amount.
Absolutely.
So I love this shared on screen, and I think it's appropriate now in the 60s when after Ford and Wayne have worked so much together. This is quite the proper ensembled cast.
Yeah.
One reason why I also thought maybe it would be good in the 50s is because, in my opinion, James Stewart is 10 years too old.
Oh, yes. I think they're both a little old, honestly. When I see them on screen, I was just like, oh wow, I can really tell. But I mean, that's for the birds. It's not really a criticism or anything. But
just because of James Stewart in particular, the way he acts too, he's always flabbergasted.
Yeah.
He's just like, wow, what's going on?
I know.
here?
I was really trying. That's actually pretty good. That's a good impression.
I'm the wall.
Right. It's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Right. The only thing is and then to see him as this fresh out of law school student, and also kind of have a budding relationship with Vera Miles.
Yep.
That would almost be, it's just like, all right, he's a little bit old for the role, but that happened a lot back then. It's the fact that we start with him being an aged, distinguished senator.
Yeah.
But in real life, it looks like,
he should have been
5 years passed?
Yeah,
but
so
no,
true.
it's like multiple round. He has governor, senator.
Yeah.
He worked in an office overseas.
Yeah.
That's when it's a little bit like, I don't know about that.
So true. Yeah.
With
Makeup
Wayne, at
should
least,
just let him be.
Right.
You know?
Wayne is just Wayne.
Right. He's looked like that since 39, basically. So I would say one aspect that I want to, not a critique, but more so just kind of pose and position for anyone that watches it, for folks at home. This is not an action-packed movie, folks, unlike our other Western this week that we'll be focusing on. But no scene really feels like wasted time. And again, I think it's because every moment in this film is used to examine this concept of frontier versus civilization. And while it may sound potentially boring, I need to stress that how airtight the script is with this. Every character is positioned towards this theme. Every plot beat is positioned towards examining these different ideologies and creating conflict with them. And I think that's where it goes from just, what otherwise could be like a debate or something like that.
Right.
Instead, it's creating a drama around that conflict of ideologies. So
that's good. And it's for 2 hours. It's like 2 hours and 3 minutes. That's the fact that it is fine tuned and slim, kind of, and appropriate. The fact that that's still 2 hours is impressive.
Yeah.
One of the last scenes when there's that big debate of who do we elect for something, I felt like that went a little bit long.
Okay.
And almost in the beginning there was some wasted dialogue, but that's splitting hairs at that point.
Sure. I actually really like that scene just in the sense that, I don't want to get too involved in spoilers.
Course,
I don't want to do a deep dive. But, I think my observation overall is just that you can tell Ford and team are just, there's not once that they let it go that this is lasered in on, hey, these characters all operate differently in this town. Let's see how they work when we put them all together, basically.
Yep.
On this recent watch, I think one key to the film's success is actually having a personality like John Wayne be a supporting character. I was worried for a second because I actually like your idea that John Wayne is kind of in the middle between Stewart and I forget who plays Liberty Valance.
Lee Van Cleef. No.
Lee Van Cleef is in it.
Lee Marvin. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Lee Marvin.
Which a great bad guy, by the way.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
But Wayne is totally positioned as
I like that.
That middleman.
Interesting.
He represents both men.
I guess so often I just saw it as kind of a two position, especially with how some of the romance works. But I actually like that yours a lot better. Nonetheless, though, you would agree that Wayne is not the lead. You know what I mean?
No. That goes to James Stewart all the way.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think where I felt, at least watching this again, that being a success is that Wayne is a very dominant force on screen.
Fills the room.
Right. He's John motherfucking Wayne,
That's my steak, Valance. I have to work on it.
It's good.
96 episodes. I haven't had any practice,
And your Jimmy Stewart came out swinging. That's good enough. I would say an issue that I have with some of his Westerns is that I get a little bit annoyed or bored with just how much of a character actor he is. Right. It is John Wayne 100% of the time. Just like how it was with Brando for One-Eyed Jacks. It was just like, oh, this is just like so much Brando. It almost doesn't belong.
Right.
Not saying that it doesn't belong for John Wayne, but I return to our director, John Ford, once again, for understanding his strength in small doses. I feel like John Wayne working with John Ford over this is once again, a brilliant move because he knows exactly where to put him. There's no moment that John Wayne, I feel like, overstays his welcome, even when he's throwing out the things like, Pilgrim and whatnot. And that's where I call back to Stagecoach, because Stagecoach, John Wayne is one of 9.
Big ensemble cast.
Yeah. And obviously the standout,
movie.
An immediate star power on screen. But I feel once again there's just such a mindfulness of the positioning of things that John Wayne doesn't overstay his welcome. I would say, folks, my food analogy this week.
Okay.
For the man himself, John Wayne is a bouillon cube of Western.
Wow.
Simple to add him into water and instantly have a Western base for the soup of the movie.
I love this.
But bite into him on his own, and it's an overpowering flavor.
Don't dilute him enough.
Right.
And it's too much.
Right, exactly.
I love it. I disagree, but I love the analogy.
Right.
Don't forget that when John Wayne fills a room so much, when he takes that Brando-esque where he's just like, he's being so John Wayne now.
Right.
That's why people love John Wayne.
Absolutely.
And because he's so not a good actor, but a good actor because he's just himself.
He
plays the character.
Yeah.
Lives his life in a very similar way type of deal. But love the Bouillon Cube.
Yeah, there we go. Good. But jokes aside, folks, I think this is an excellent film and really perfectly balanced. Again, in moments that you're watching this, you might even say to yourself that, is this a little boring? Is this something that is, not really grabbing my attention? But I feel like the film earns your attention by just not wasting time. Every single scene, back to back, has the focus of examining what these characters are doing in the frontier and how civilization, how civility is changing what they're used to. I think it may not be the Western you're looking for if you're looking for shootouts or style, but its drama and focus elevates it so much higher than a simple Western action film, and might be one of the best from the legendary director John Ford as well. We're going to go ahead and give the man who shot Liberty Valance an 84.
Whoa! Woo! Okay! Yes, sir! Yes, sir! Wow!
It's an excellent film.
Ear-to-ear grins. So nice to know there's nowhere to go but down, too.
Right. So nice to know. Westerns will only punch below that. No.
Holy hell, 84%, Finn.
I think it is. It's hard to say it's the best Western just because I know when I say Western, I want High Noon. I want the shootout,
Right.
But at the same time, it is the best Western because it gets to the root of what a Western is about, and that's this frontier life.
Yeah.
This, this fringe.
It is the boiled down essence of a telling of something. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
I got to say, that's huge. And there's more to watch. There's films you have not seen yet, too. So we'll get there.
Searchers for the fourth time may just crack it.
90. I can't wait for episode 196 to get our second John Wayne film. 84% is really good, Vin. Now I have to come clean a little bit.
Okay.
This never hit for me the way it was always talked about.
Sure.
And people that I respect other people's opinions as well, people that I've really heard deconstruct film to a granular, proper level, adore this film to the point of not Westerns, of all of cinema. They say it's one of the best films ever made, one of their favorites. And so going into it, it just never hit for me quite to that. It's like, well, am I missing something? Am I detached from this? I went back to it again, of course, like I said last week, and I really like this film. It's hard for me to say I'm in love with this film.
Really? Wow.
I know. Very surprising.
No, but I totally feel you on the expectations can sometimes kill things.
Yeah.
That's K-Mutiny.
And things, right. The K-Mutiny effect. Things bringing it down for me was a little bit of James Stewart. Not that he was overacting.
Interesting.
He's a naturally Gumby, kind of stringy kind of guy. And I just think his age did hurt. I needed a younger Jimmy Stewart in this.
To sell this
by
naive
like 15
lawyer.
years. Exactly.
Right. Green on the gills.
And and other than that overall story, and that's everything it's trying to be, it hits so well on. I would say very minor things that we can take a microscope to. Lee Marvin is great. I do really like John Wayne in it. He's got a great scene where he's getting a little drunk and he's pissed off. Love seeing Wayne in that kind of scene and everything like that.
Anytime they make him a little bit evil in ways.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm a big fan of.
Overall, though, it rises above Two Shoes. I thought halfway into this film, I'm just like, oh no, like, how am I going to give this Two Shoes? It is a lower Two Shoes with one of those laces are tied though. One of the laces is tied.
Right.
It's safe. It is a very good film.
Yeah.
I'm just not in love with the film where so many other fans of Westerns are.
Sure. And I think you said it perfectly that for a lot of people, this elevates above the Western label on it. That people just think it's a good drama at that point.
And it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very good film.
But I think for you want best Western, not necessarily just a good Western with good drama.
I want a lot. Yeah, but 84, Vin, we spent a lot of time on it, but we did need it. I think it's important. It's our first Wayne film. We needed to kind of get your feelings on the John Wayne, in general, and the Scorsese thing.
The Pilgrim effect.
Love it, though. Yeah, Two Shoes, One Lace, and we got an 84%. Massive. Let's move on, though, right away here. We are jumping forward. This is 1966 now, and this is Django with a D. I don't know if... I'm assuming now, because Django, Quentin Tarantino's, has been out for a little while. Yep. There was always that thing of the original actor was also in the 2014 rendition of Django.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people have seen it. Maybe some people still don't know that it actually was an original film based on an original character.
Yeah.
Multiple Django films actually came out in the 60s and 70s. This is the first one back in 66, directed by Sergio Corbucci, an Italian Western film. Let's get into it right away. I started this, turned it off in 10 minutes. And
you didn't even give it 10 minutes.
No, and I didn't fall asleep. I turned it off. Wow. And I said, I'm not going to waste my small time I have on this, and instead I watched Rango.
Oh, so that was Rango.
Which I'm glad I watched Rango.
Okay.
So let's get into it right away. Django 66, Finn.
Very interesting. Well, a true spaghetti Western, folks, if you've never heard this term before, this refers to a string of Western films produced on the cheap and usually shot in Italy. Much like we described with the Blaxploitation special not too long ago, it's less of a subgenre and more of an era of film. They are all Westerns ultimately, but they kind of vary in how the Western plays out, and I feel like even coming off the back of Liberty Valance, that a Western itself can have variation. There's a
I'll give you 25 subgenres of Westerns.
Within Western. That's great. That's how we keep Western Month going.
Yeah.
But it's hallmark here of spaghetti Westerns being heightened style, soundtracks, and hyper violence, which is why we will get a lot of people in love with returning to those movies and kind of ripping from them and trying to take basically the best parts. Django, for better or worse, perfectly represents that era, with an iconic performance by the ice-cold Frank Nero, who has been recognized most recently by Chad Stahelski, Quentin Tarantino alike as a legend. Yeah, he's in John Wick 2.
Right, yep.
He runs the Italian Continental, so this is a good shout-out. But Nero, I don't have too many notes on, mostly because the lip syncing really kills a lot of it.
It's tough.
But Nero is cool. He fits the bill of before Clint Eastwood was the man with no name. He fits the bill on what they were going for, being the man with no name. Of course, my awareness of this film began with the great Django Unchained in 2012. But
2012, that's right.
Right.
Not 14, yeah.
Doesn't that feel...
I could have sworn it was 14.
I know.
That's
2012
crazy.
feels too old for it. But it wasn't until I watched this film did I see how much of its personality is sprinkled through so much other media. I mean a lot, specifically Django, not even just spaghetti Western trends. Django is over a lot of things. One of these being anime, actually. It's well known that Westerns like Fistful of Dollars, as a trilogy, borrows from the samurai films of the previous decade, mainly Kurosawa films.
Right.
And likewise, this feels identical to the Wandering Ronin, Man with No Name story structure that makes up so much of 90s golden age anime. I really feel like, to the point that there are specific shots that I know in Cowboy Bebop have shots like there's the guy that carries around a coffin exactly like Django. So
that's awesome.
It really is. It was a fun watch in that way. That's not really playing into my rating too much because there's a lot this film is kind of falls short on. But I want to respect that it has a place a little bit in film history. And folks at home, if you find yourself a buff of kind of film history in that way, Django could be a soft recommendation.
Okay.
So Django captures all of this, the anime-ness of it, but the spaghetti western-ness of it perfectly, because Django is seriously cartoony as a western. He drags around a coffin with a Gatling gun in it. This is he's just some like wandering justice with lightning speed. Arriving to the town, he stumbles upon a power struggle between rival gangs and shakes up the food chain on who has the quickest hand in the West. In this way, I think it's funny that you skip this to go to Rango, because I feel like this has just such the boiled down Western story of what Rango was trying to do, that in the animal kingdom of Rango, that he introduces something new to the food chain and shakes up the town, basically.
That's pretty funny.
So
okay, they already swapped it for a good one.
Right, yeah, basically. Folks, I want to make it very clear, you aren't in this one for the drama. This is no Liberty Valance. This is dead simple. On top of a very bad lip sync on the dub, it's really more about...
bad. It's bad, folks.
I mean, you gave it 10 minutes. You didn't even see the worst of it.
I was so disheartened by it.
Interesting.
The moment it starts, I was so disheartened.
You.
And then I was just like, I know I want to watch a film, and I knew I felt good. I was awake, that's huge.
Right. Not always a given. But on top of that very bad, and I mean really bad, lip sync on the dub, it's just more about action and style. I would almost go so far to say that the simplicity of the story hurts the experience, actually, and really only survives on the most bare-bones skeletal rule of cool possible. Not saying that there can't be just a boiled-down cool Western. Clearly, these spaghetti Westerns are proof of that. Clearly, the Dollars trilogy are proof of that with Clint Eastwood. There's something about it that it reaches a rock bottom of simplicity that kind of loses you, and you're just paying attention to the action. That action, once again, is very cartoony with stylish zooms and shootouts, feeling right out of a comic book. But I have to be honest, that's where my area of disappointment was the greatest, especially coming off the Wild Bunch. Yes, there might be a lot of iconic fight scenes in this, but it felt like more of a TV-level production, and specifically like an early 60s TV-level production.
I'm not surprised by that, actually.
Yeah. Enemies will just blindly run into frame just to be met with a puff of smoke and instantly tumbling to the ground. I mean, it felt like, season 1 of Star Trek with Kirk, karate chopping the lizard or something like that. Like, that's how minimally, that's how, I don't want to say effortless. I don't want to say... It just feels like it doesn't have consideration. You know what I mean? The action doesn't have put the same thought into it. I mean, as other aspects.
It probably felt like they had to film it really fast on a low budget, which is exactly what they did.
Right, and that's what these are.
Just as if you were trying to pump out an episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
To your point. Yeah.
Django may boast a high body count and fast action, giving its hyper-violent style to spaghetti westerns, but it is at the cost of stakes, folks. And to me, it just didn't feel like the action had any care put into it. Django can be boasted as the quickest hand in the West and have all this lethality, but if the enemies he's up against fall and tumble after one puff of smoke that's not even pointed in their direction, then how does that feel? It feels bad is what it does. So I'm going to be fully transparent and say the soundtrack probably clocks this up a rating at least a solid 10 points. The soundtrack is very good.
It's that good?
Yeah. And sometimes that's all that you need. Luis Bacalov, I believe it's how it's pronounced, is the composer, and a composer Tarantino has had in his holster since Kill Bill. And boy, does it make for some cool music. These Italians in the 60s, they love adding guitar to Westerns, and it is the best. I mean, if there is anything that I wish could be retroactive into the 50s, just add guitar to the Westerns. That's all I need. I need distorted guitar and amp up the coolness of it. Django's theme is legendary, of course, playing as the title track to Tarantino's Django's Unchained. And my personal favorite, if you do check it out, folks, on the soundtrack itself, is a track named La Corsa Part 2, which is just like, man, it's just like wow, it just takes you back. It is like
Okay.
It's such an opposite way to make a score and soundtrack than today, where there is a degree of modesty to try to it's not the soundtrack, it's about the movie.
Right.
This is about the soundtrack. No one told this Italian man to chill out. Like he's louder than the film itself. Okay. So and identically to his peer Ennio Morricone, so much of the score just screams Western. I feel like why I love more guitar elements in these Westerns and crazy blazing horns is that, for me, it's got to sell it. It's got to sell the Western attitude of these cowboys. So, folks, I think this movie has a lot of style and is a fun, breezy action Western to watch, but I'd be lying if I said this one didn't show its age. And some of that style only going so far without pretty much any substance. We're going to go ahead and give Django 1966 a 52.
Okay, 52. Just a tick above there. Not surprising. And that is with the music doing a lot of weight there.
Right. It would easily be in the 40s without the
as
music.
far as content goes.
Maybe lower.
I mean, you watch 10 minutes, I wouldn't be surprised by that. So maybe check out the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And Frank Nero is cool. He looks cool.
Yeah.
He still looks cool today.
I know.
Like
in an alternate reality, him and Clint Eastwood are swapped because they both have like the piercing blue eyes.
Yes. Yeah.
And they have the same swagger of it. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, but 52%, I don't know. Go check it out.
Like I said, film historians, really big film buffs.
Yeah.
As Tarantino lovers, I think you watch this as like
homework.
Yeah, curiosity type of thing.
Okay, we're going to keep things moving along here, Vin. We are jumping to 1998. This is the classic Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Yeah. What about this film this week? I was shocked to see it this week.
Right, yeah.
Happy to see it, though.
Yeah, so while we covered Rango in the last few weeks, there were so many Easter eggs of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in that film because of the Johnny Depp angle, but also specifically when Rango is falling off of the moving truck, he falls into a 3D Rango of 5 version of Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp in it from this movie. So I don't know. While I've seen many parts of this film broken up, I've never really watched it all the way through from start to finish. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's kind of a perfect random watch to get on the website. So that was kind of my logic with watching Fear and Loathing.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing to get on the site for sure.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I think I've seen it multiple times. I didn't watch it fresh for this week, but I probably watched it through maybe twice and then bits and parts, 5 times or something like that.
And it's one of those things that I'm familiar with it enough.
Of course, yeah.
But, watching through it I thought was important.
I love it.
Folks, I would like to start with the MPAA rating for this film. Rated R for pervasive extreme drug use and related bizarre behavior, strong lantage, and brief nudity. And boy, if that doesn't just nail this film, give that MPAA guy a raise. Because imagine submitting that to your boss. Related bizarre. What is related about this bizarre behavior?
Sometimes that MPA, it's just like, wow, they're just making this. They're just making this crap up.
Right. I want to know what other films fall under these categories.
So you would love. It's funny when I was doing the compilations on the site, and we have a boys watch. Like Cop Shot is on there.
Yeah.
I think we could probably go through all films, look at the MPAA description, and the Cop Shot is just like, oh, that's a boys watch.
That's a boys watch.
But this nailed it for sure.
Absolutely. So, if you're not familiar with this one, folks, it's a doozy. This is one of the many stories penned by the legendary journalist Hunter S. Thompson, who became very close with Johnny Depp as a result of this production. Thompson earned his fame through creating gonzo journalism as a movement, being a hyper-unique voice to grab the attention of his readers. Speaking honestly, I don't have any reading time with Thompson, but instead I would say my best experience, and probably your best experience as well, Tom, with gonzo journalism comes from Anthony Bourdain. That we have these very strong personalities giving a very subjective type of viewpoint, first-person viewpoint of their experiences in a journalistic way. Basically, though, overall, the term is referring to that voice of the author being inseparable from the experience of the story. And boy, does that nail what Fear and Loathing is as well. It's a very strong narration. My description, and I would say alternate title for this film, is Adventures in Not Being Sober. We follow one of Thompson's stories, which Johnny Depp plays the man himself. And what starts as a journalism assignment to cover events in Las Vegas rapidly, and I mean rapidly, spirals into a drug-fueled bender that somehow a story was written about. I think the most unbelievable parts is that Hunter S. Thompson wrote anything during the times.
Things were written down, actually.
Yeah, but I guess that's why he's a famous author. Don't sweat if you can't tell what is true or not, though. Most of the experience through Thompson's eyes is him being high as a kite, and his narrative voice is driven by this chaotic feeling. I feel like the power of narration in this, again, what I would think captures the true-to-formness of his gonzo writing, but also there's just such personality to it, and really sells it. As wild as this movie is with the insane variety of drugs, the movie is authentic in presenting how the high feels for these characters. Take the psychedelics, for instance. Not only does this avoid dated CGI or...
Oh, that's a good point, man.
Avoiding tacky jokes that every stoner comedy before it has made, face melting or some shit like that.
Right.
Instead, there's an attention to detail in the set design and lighting, and honestly, it feels nightmarish at times, but in that way is 10,000 times more authentic in its presentation of what it feels like to be under these drugs. I'll circle back to it, but the surrealism that was achieved in this film is fantastic and should be placed alongside of many other great surreal films. Even though they may be drug-fueled, drug-inspired, the surrealism, it captures what you want in the mental aspect of how it, maybe tortures a character or something like that.
I think that's a phenomenal point.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie's made 10 years later, totally different.
Oh, yeah. And even just avoiding the pitfall of, jokes that were made in, Cheech and Chong, and, or just anything.
Definitely.
So... This is where Thompson's writing is excellent and just really shines. His description of the countless drugs is just so vivid and so colorful in vocabulary that you could be sober as a bird, folks. You could not touch anything and still understand what our characters are experiencing and also the nightmare that they could be experiencing by mixing these. In this way, I would say the film almost becomes Scorsese-like in how it plays out. Fun at first, but then easily slips into being a bit scary. Take the great descriptions from Goodfellas or Wolf of Wall Street. Wolf of Wall Street specifically, but the lewds.
That was a good one, yeah.
I feel like that gives you an idea of the type of narration, but also the quality of the narration and writing to this film. I feel like it's right on par for that.
Yeah, very good, yeah.
So, Johnny Depp's performance is fantastic. I certainly... would say this is in the vein of Jack Sparrow before he's Jack Sparrow, before that was a thing. I mean, his cigarette
yeah, really, in the same vein.
Yeah, because it's it's basically just him mumbling his words, Okay. So exchange rum for every drug, and that's what you get. So, it's a minor point, but his cigarette holder has to be one of the greatest props to channel a character all the time.
Definitely.
Just because it gets that talking down,
Yep.
Benicio del Toro is equally great in this, coming only a few years after his breakout role in Usual Suspects. I'll be honest, I don't really have much more notes on the characters themselves because it's so hard to define them. They're always high, and then they're always high on different drugs. So it's just I don't know what...
You can't say much more other than the acting is phenomenal.
Right.
I mean, Del Toro, people know what Del Toro looks like now. You go back then, he's indistinguishable almost in a certain way. So the two of them just kind of, man, the way they interact with each other, with the drugs, with their own surroundings, they're two great performances.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he is very much an incredibly present supporting character.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of screen time.
Oh, for sure. Like I said earlier, the crafted surrealism is what I appreciate most about this film. There's a quick dream sequence that has a judge. I think Depp is imagining what it would be like to be in front of a judge or something like that while he's high, which is the paranoia of it. It just felt, and I could not shake this, right out of the 1985 masterpiece Brazil. I just couldn't shake it. I was just like, what's going on here? And what do you know?
Yep.
The director is the same. Terry Gilliam.
I can't believe you didn't know.
Again. I just wasn't aware of it.
I didn't know either until I was doing research on it.
Yeah, and it was I felt it in that scene. I felt Brazil come through in that scene. I was like, whoa. And even in this dream sequence, he's not supposed to be high necessarily. This is all his mind.
Right.
Man, did it capture just the surreal mix of comedy and also like a little bit scary.
It is. The film is uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, I watched it mostly when I was younger.
Sure,
so it definitely
sure.
comes off a little scary, a little bit.
Right,
Just
right.
that uncomfortableness, that's something's off kind of deal.
It's like a suspense comedy, as weird as that sounds.
yeah.
But in the same way, Brazil is kind of without borders, without genre to it.
I mean, that's so cool that you found those connections without knowing the connection.
I as soon as I saw it, I was like, I just
You're a
couldn't
pro.
shake it.
You're a pro.
But it just didn't hit me until that judge scene, and all of my praise on set design and care putting into the unique presentation, it really made perfect sense. And that's where we'll end it, folks. I mean, I would say, like Brazil, it's almost beyond a genre description. But because of how intense the film is, I do have to say it's really not for everyone.
Yeah.
My best stab at a genre would be a surreal, drug-fueled, suspenseful comedy, or in other words, something that you're going to have to probably watch for yourself. We're going to go ahead and give Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas a 77.
Wow, very good score. Yeah. Very good score. And honestly, like going through it a little bit, kind of critically disliked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, I don't know, I'm really surprised by it.
Yeah.
Because of the performances, and usually just critics are more... I find critics to be easier going when it comes to like drug content stuff almost.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of shocked me. Even from Ebert to Tomatoes to a couple other ones I checked as well.
Yeah.
Just surprised me.
I think so. And I think people just, or maybe critics, they see it and it's also, it's an offensive film in the sense that like you're not at ease watching this film.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. But
it is an offensive film a bit. Right. It makes you,
It's offensive in every way.
Yeah, it puts you on your heels a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you're watching almost a constant struggle.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Shift in and out of fun times and then scary. Oh boy, do we have to go to the hospital times,
right.
You know. That's where I urge the craft of this movie. This is not your stoner comedy. This is not
no.
What is that new movie coming out, Strays, and has like some like tripping on mushrooms jokes. It avoids any cliche and is just such its own thing.
Love it. 77, great score, Vin. 2 hours, do you think it's a little bit too long? Could some be shaved off there?
I do think that is a little bit too long, just in the sense that also how the story is structured, there's a really big fall-off point halfway through.
Right.
Of course, anyone that's seen the film knows the scene in we'll say the bathroom, but that's more so a judgment on the ordering of it. I didn't bring it up because it's Hunter S. Thompson. If that's how he experienced it, that's how he experienced it. So.
All right, very good, Vince. 77 for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Before we get to our new films here, folks, just want to remind you, we're going off the value for value model. So if you're new to the podcast here, what we do is, Vin and I, of course, we sit down every week. We host the podcast. Vin watches the films. However, you all help produce the podcast. And how you do that, you produce with monetary support. Go to thedailyratings.com and go to the donations tab. And through your monetary support, you become a producer of the Daily Ratings. And you show us what value you're getting from our product, basically. So the idea is, did you laugh this week? Are you starting to get into film more than what you were before listening to us? Are you making your own list? Are you going off of us a little bit? Make you laugh, cry? Do you love it, hate it, whatever? It's value in your pocket. Can you show us value back in our pocket? So we have fun set donations. We have a monthly. We have a weekly. Well, a few monthlies and a weekly. But the idea is, if you just want to go ahead and peg a number, a random number, you can go ahead and send that in our way. It's whatever value you're getting from what we're presenting here, basically, to you. That's kind of how we're doing things. It's kind of a new way of doing things. You know, we're trying to stay away from advertisers. That's why we're doing it like this. We also don't want to just deal with Patreon, because that absolutely sets you up kind of for a monthly thing. Yeah. It also deals with paywalls, where if you give 5 months, you get this much. If you give us 25 months or $25 a month, you get even more content. $5 to you is a lot different than the other person and another person.
Yeah, so we want to put the control in your hands as to what value you get out of this.
Exactly. Now, it does take a little responsibility because everything is free. So technically, you're getting it for free, but the idea is building up a little bit of family, a community. It builds rapport with you, because when you do send in a donation, you can write in a note as long as you want and send it our way. We're going to address it right here on the podcast, whether it be, again, love, hate, critiques, comments, questions, whatever. That's our time right now in this podcast, this segment, to go through that. And we love getting donation notes from everybody. Hopefully more and more are going to be donated in as more and more people listening. We're approaching our Hundy episode, so don't forget to donate the Hundy on the Hundy. We have a lot of great stuff planned in the future. We've got some stuff in the works that we're really excited about to bring for everyone, for you guys. So Again, it's a value for value model. It's thedailyratings.com. You can also hit us up at Venmo at The Daily Ratings. And if you're into Bitcoin or you know about Podcasting 2.0, we do accept Satoshis on our site. Or, of course, if you have the Podverse app, we're good to go there as well. So we just want to make it accessible to all y'all. We appreciate it so much. Okay, Vin, with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to our newly released films. We're going to go ahead and cover The Last Voyage of the Demeter?
Right, it's Demeter. I always thought it was Demeter because I believe Goddess of Winter, I want to say, or Goddess of Death or something like that. I always thought it was Demeter.
Okay, but it's Demeter.
Demeter.
And in the film, it's Demeter? Okay.
Yeah, so.
The Last Voyage of Demeter. Let's kind of set it up. This is a Dracula-based story.
Yep.
And this the more I had no interest in it, and then I read about it, and I thought, that's actually not a bad idea.
Interesting.
In execution, certainly in the box office, I don't know how well it's hitting. So let's get into it right away. How is it performing as a film?
Well, I would say that the trailer on this one lost me, Tom. On top of giving away the entire goddamn movie. I mean, man. But we don't get many straight-up monster movies like this, so I wanted to give it a shot, and there was some soft hype online for this one.
Oh, okay.
Something I was confused about was the significance of this vampire-based story. Initially, I thought otherwise, but I guess this is a story within the original Bram Stoker Dracula. Right in the opening crawl, we are told that this is adapting elements of the captain's log from the novel, which was like in the appendices, I guess.
Okay.
You know, I'm 50-50 on the inclusion of Big D. Obviously, it's the best marketing choice to include Dracula.
Yeah, you'd be stupid not to throw it in.
Right. But this goes back to what I always say, that I'm not a main producer in Hollywood because I'd make all the wrong choices. I think this would be so much cooler and predictable, less predictable, if it was a random vampire, and maybe even switch up some of those vampire rules.
But is the idea that this is like an origin story a little bit?
I
don't hate that. And the fact, if you're going back to the original book and going through, it's if we know that the captain wrote stuff, or you have like extra content there, expanding on that, opening up the Dracula world, I'm cool with, so long as it's going to be like one of the biggest movies of the year, maybe, or you take a lot of care and love, and a $45 million budget only.
Sure.
You know, So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. By the nature of the story, there's definitely some sequel bait at the end, as it would just be,
of course,
how it would set up in the book as well. This kind of even a kickoff to Bram's
because
Bram's novel.
Would a random vampire story really do all that well?
I don't. That's why I'm a weirdo. I would.
This isn't doing well, so it doesn't.
Right. That aside, set up here, folks. In 1897, a ship named Demeter sets sail to London with a devilish cargo the crew are otherwise unaware of. This movie has a decent cast of semi-recognizable faces and presents the ensemble in a way that will leave the audience guessing who will die first in this kind of bloody affair. But sadly, this never flips our expectation enough to avoid a lot of monster movie cliches. In screenwriting, I'm a big fan of haunted houses as a setting concept. To me, any horror that is set in a hard-to-escape place, trapping characters for scares, falls into this trope, the haunted house.
You like that, huh?
Oh, yeah, because when it's done differently.
Okay, there you go.
Not that it's just a haunted house, but when it's done, something different. Many successful horrors will raise the stakes by emphasizing the inescapability of that setting. This story doing the same by putting the boat helplessly at sea.
Right.
I would say that's part of my praise for this. I feel like there is some thought to creating some tension and some creativity to how the boat is used with a monster on it. Someday, folks, I'll have the courage to speak about one of my favorite movies, 1979's Alien, and we will undoubtedly talk about the stakes of a haunted house in space. So this movie achieves a slight sliver of that, which I enjoyed. But not much beyond that is done to clock up the tension. This movie drastically underutilizes its rated R rating, which I felt was a serious miss. It's not very scary at all, and honestly, gore could have been clocked way up. I felt like some practical effects they could have just had some fun with in some way. Set design and creature design is a small highlight here for the film, but I feel like it's really only going to hit for the most die-hard vampire fans on this. The plot is investigative, but not really compelling for keeping our attention. This doesn't really have the problem solving needed for a truly great monster movie. I'll say this is slightly reminiscent of John Carpenter's The Thing, where they learn slowly about the monster, but it fails, I think, on two fronts. Just when the investigation is picking up, the plot throws in a stowaway character that just expedition dumps everything we need to know about Dracula and completely
I hate that.
Yeah, it also deflates what was working in the film of just like, we need to figure out what the hell is on this ship and how it operates and how to kill it.
Right. You want that visual. You want that told to you visually and actually make it part of the movie.
Or even just through character actions, not just like, hey, I know it all and I happen to be on this ship and, it's just, it just was really like lame to see. And there's just not enough internal drama to keep my attention. They needed that paranoia in the thing to create more stress in the settings. Like they have the pressure cooker, but they don't use it. The ship idea, again, cool, set it at sea, they can't escape.
It is cool, yeah.
But it's almost squandered. There's nothing done with it, or there's not enough done with it to really, amp things up.
Right.
Turn the tension. That's really where I'm at with this film. Folks, it's not outwardly bad, but it's played so straight and has so little to surprise you that I have very little to praise for it. Not scary enough for a serious horror, and certainly not to stand out in a year with a lot of
Talk about being at sea.
That's the sea. We're all in the haunted house. And like I said, while it technically may work as a monster movie, technically may work as an interesting Dracula origin for super hardcore vampire fans, it just brings little new to the table. We're going to go ahead and give The Last Voyage of the Demeter a 50 on the dot.
Boy, 50 on the dot. Boy, that was a quick one, V.
Yeah. Well, got to make up for Liberty Mountain.
Yeah. Wow, 50%.
Yeah.
Just not much to say about it. That's exactly what a 50% is.
Absolutely.
When you just don't have much to say about it.
It was first time in a while that I was like, yep, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah. And, folks, you're looking for alternate recommendations. The two films I reference are basically the perfect versions of the elements that slightly work in this film, being 1979's Alien and, of course, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Okay, wow, 50%. Gave it the old one shoe, one lace. the rarity.
The rarity.
Okay, all right. And, boy, go see it now because I don't think it's going to last long in theaters.
Right.
So let's go ahead and move on. This is not yet in theaters, but was in theaters for a day.
Right.
Vin managed to go see it on that day. This is going to be coming out in a couple weekends. So let's find out if it's worth it or not. Vin, this is Gran Turismo by Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah.
And how'd you like it?
Well, folks, I'll start with saying my thoughts on our director have really evolved over time. Neil Blomkamp went from being, honestly, a prodigy of science fiction to a director of varying quality over 10 years. Works like 2009's District 9 and even his short film projects through Oat Studios showed that he had an exciting new voice to bring to the genre. But 2021's laughably bad Demonic showed that his early career may be just a little bit of lightning in a bottle.
That's right. Well, early career, too, Elysium did not hit super well.
Yeah.
And if anyone was probably going to like that film, it was going to be you.
Right,
and I don't think you like that film too much.
No, I didn't really like that film too much. And Chappie's in the same boat. I really want to like Chappie.
Yeah, he does Chappie as well, folks.
But again, it's just like...
He was becoming a very one-track director a little bit in this whole theme of sci-fi, robots, futuristic type stuff, dystopian things. So most people know him for District 9, which is a great film.
Oh, yeah.
And then setting up with, you described Oat Studio. It was a long episode ago. It was one of the early episodes. Spent some time talking about Oat Studio, and people should still go check it out.
Yeah, I think that might have been for the Demonic review that we did.
That could have been. That probably was it. But the idea behind Oat Studio is it's major kind of players that deal with futuristic or alien / robotic type dystopian future stuff, and they're short films for the most part.
Yeah.
But it's big talent behind it. For short films, some big money.
Sure.
Short films are concerned.
Sure.
So some really cool projects on Oat Studios. You can just go ahead on their website and check some of their projects out.
Yep.
Kind of cool. And then when you look at his films he makes, he is so in that
yes
genre.
That's his baby.
But then Demonic comes out, and now Gran Turismo.
Right. I personally, and I will say passionately, hope this is not the case, that we're going to just see him slip further and further into kind of some mediocrity, but him taking on a corporate project like this is not a great sign, folks. This was not the one to kind of win me back on some of my building thoughts. So, Blomkamp, I'm rooting for you, but I want to see District 9 again. I want to see, the design. Give me the guns. Give me Weta Studios working with you.
That's the thing. How much was it Blomkamp that made District 9 great?
Right.
Or Peter Jackson?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And also definitely a commentary on the value of producing in these films. So, Gran Turismo is our second bout with PlayStation Productions, the first being Tom's favorite, Uncharted, from last year. And this movie exists in a weird split of being 50% a video game movie, not that there's much of a story to Gran Turismo to adapt, and 50% a true story biopic, which is where I would argue this film does work quite a bit. In this, we see the origins of real-life racer Jan Mardenborough. Yeah, Mardenborough. Boy, I'll tell you what, pronunciation this episode.
We're struggling.
We're struggling.
Our tongues are all over the place.
We'll see what makes it in the edit. But back in 2008, this real story, Gran Turismo ran a competition to turn their driving simulator into a talent funnel and pumped out competition-ready race car drivers. Jan was a huge success in this program and still racing today. Actually, he did the stunt work for his actor counterpart in the movie, which is pretty cool stuff.
Very cool.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, he essentially starred in the most important part of the movie, which was the racing. So he got his own movie. So good for him. Good for Jan. This biopic side of it, easily the best. I'm going to structure this review that I got some bones to pick with this movie, but by the end, and not even in a cheap razzle-dazzle way, the end really does bring it home. There's a huge divide online before this movie even came out, that critics are really hating on this one, and fans are in love with this film.
Okay.
And I feel like it just has to do with what the film does in its last third, that just will win anyone over, honestly.
Do you think... Well, apparently not the critics, though. The critics aren't loving it.
Right,
I would say, these are Sony fanboys. Just like we have our Marvel fanboys.
Yeah.
And just uptick the rating on that,
Right.
the audience score.
Yeah.
Maybe you have this, where Sony fanboys are Sony fanboys.
Yeah.
Even me.
Right. I have it in the notes. Okay. I call us both out. We are Sony fanboys.
Sony fan. I had a big... and. One of the only video games franchise I ever cared about was Uncharted, of course. I love it. But the only other one that I could say I really liked quite a lot, I love Gran Turismo 5. I had a huge Gran Turismo phase in me with PS3.
Yeah, and that's the one that Nissan partners with them for this GT Academy.
That's correct. Yeah, right along there. So I feel like one of the reasons why this story hits for you a little bit, and the reason why, that's the good part of the film, the biopic part, is because it actually is kind of a biography of what happened. The fact that it's real and actually happened helps it completely.
Yep.
And if this was just a story, or if this just was a written up thing, it's like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
From video game racer to racer.
It's like, all right. I get it.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. But it happened, and I feel like that's really where the film works best, is when it's just doing its biopic thing.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
So, this story originally coming from this PS3 generation of consoles was not cutting it for Sony, however. Blomkamp and team were definitely tasked with updating everything to the most modern hardware and games, and without a doubt serves as a sales pitch for Sony, and it feels very deliberate, especially in the early parts of this film. Here it is. I have no problem in saying I'm a huge Sony fanboy, like you would as well, Tom. I think this decision was the first misstep in telling this true story. This is a great biopic idea on its own, but around every corner you can feel the corporate grasp. To the point
I'm
that... I'm
not surprised by this at all.
Yeah, to the point that there are more PS5-specific shout-outs than Gran Turismo game shout-outs. This is at its worst in the CGI of the film, where HUD and user interfaces of Sony products will stand out more than anything from the actual games. The sound effects that they use from this are not from the Gran Turismo games. They're from the PS5 interface.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, you'd be the one to know that, too.
Right. And maybe
how about that?
Right, that's maybe the definition of a nitpick, but I just feel like the corporate sales aspect, especially of this first hour, is just driven home so much in a way that Uncharted didn't even have to face, you know?
Yeah.
Because of the real-life aspect.
Exactly right, yep.
Yeah. What plays out from here, though, is a very by-the-numbers teen competition movie. Everyone's favorite, David Harbour, plays our typical hard-ass coach. And Orlando Bloom even comes out of obscurity to play our typical sleazy marketing manager.
He's starting to look like a dad.
Yeah.
His forehead's getting a little bit bigger, too. He's starting to age. Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I don't think I like David Harbour really all that much.
Whoa, hot take.
I mean, you know me. I would try to get everyone into Stranger Things,
Right.
which I did for you.
Right,
And then me, myself, never watched past season 1.
which is the most brilliant, genius-level move you could ever make.
By the way, I loved it. I didn't stop watching because I didn't like it. I loved it.
Yeah.
It's just like, I got enough going on.
I could fall asleep.
But then I just feel like David Harbour is overused a little bit and trying to just be all David Harbour-ish. Like, I liked him. I mean, I knew him back as Casino Royale, kind of. Or, no, he was in...
Layer Cake.
Yes. No.
No.
No,
I'm trying to think of the
2008 Craig Bond film, Quantum of Solace.
Oh, okay.
He kind of plays bad kind of CIA keeping stuff from MI6 guy. It's like a bit role,
Right.
And that's where it's just like that's where he belongs in my mind.
No better.
He's not bad as Harper, but anyway,
yeah.
that's my David Harbour comment.
That's the hot take. All right. Well, what I will say in that note, then, Harbour is leagues better than Orlando Bloom in this. Orlando Bloom falls into a very, again, predictable by the numbersness to it, where at least Harbour, I don't know, there's some emotion towards the end of the film, and he adds to the good side of that.
Okay.
Okay. This first half, though, folks, it falls into that young adult competition story structure that has largely fallen out of style since the 2010s, or at least the end of like a Hunger Games series or anything like that. That's coming back in November, I think. So, oh boy, we'll have to get back to that. But I'm happy to say the second half looks a lot better, with the plot shifting into real life events from Jan's story and a serious focus on racing. I would say when the story does eventually break free, the cliche aspects really do melt away, because once the competition is done, once he gets the gig, basically, it's about racing.
Okay.
And it's about Jan's story racing once he gets in. So I feel like it works a lot better, and the movie works as a racing biopic as it was meant to be. Even to my nitpick critiques of the corporate aspects that are sprinkled in here, or shoved in here, I should say. It's toned back because guess what? Sony doesn't have a place on the racetrack, right. You know? So I would say a big highlight for the film being true to the game experience is the sheer variety of racetracks. It is a who's who of legendary racetracks from the Nürburgring to Le Mans and so many more. Also, anyone who has played Gran Turismo can tell you, hey, that's one seriously fancy race car game.
Right,
like, they play smooth jazz over you just looking at the cars. Like, it's a fancy race car game. So I feel like the inclusion of countless prestige cars in this was a welcome sight on the racetrack, but also worthy of some credit for the production as well. This wasn't just, let's, throw in some hot cars because they're hot cars. No, it needs to show how much Gran Turismo captures the racing culture and racing brands for that reason.
Okay, cool.
So, overall, though, this did an okay job at adapting the racing elements of the game. Again, not that there's much story there to adapt. And equally did an okay job at adapting Jan's racing story and real-life story of rising to success. I think there were some surprisingly good emotional beats with his family towards the end, but I gotta be honest, folks, the blah that is sprinkled over the whole experience is through some heavy-handed studio notes from Sony, and a just straight-up washed-out story structure that did not need to be tacked on for an already compelling biopic. We're going to go ahead and give Gran Turismo a 56.
Oh, wow. 56 only.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I feel like towards the end, it's there, but it's like 1/3 of the movie.
Wow.
Where there's 2/3 of corporate garbage and just
maybe genericness.
Yeah. Just like teen competition, like been there, done that, no matter what. You get the one team that's like a badass and he's the foil. Then you get like the token girl racer. It's just like, this is, oh my God. Like,
wow, 56%. I was trying to think of what a good doubleheader film for this would be.
Right.
I was even thinking, like, would Harry Potter, the first one, be good? Because you have the dueling schools or houses or whatever.
Decidedly not a good doubleheader.
Quidditch.
Harry Potter, Sorcerer's Stone, and then Gran Turismo.
I was thinking Holes, too, with Shia LaBeouf.
Wow.
As far as 56 is lower than maybe I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So a lot of racing, of course,
yeah.
second half of film. How was it shot? Was it shot okay? As far as interior of car to exterior shots, interior, you know what I mean?
I think so. And definitely pulls a Ford versus Ferrari where you can't really tell when the CGI is taking over for real racetrack footage.
Good, yeah.
Despite obviously even sharing some of the same racetracks. So
good, okay. At least that's all right.
Yeah.
But, okay, 56%. Little lackluster, like you said, definitely on the...
That's why I was happy for Liberty Valance. Especially Django was a miss then. I was just like, all right.
Were you expecting big things for Django?
I think I was.
I was not. No.
I think that really, it honestly, it takes me back, Tom, to when we were first tackling some of those spaghetti westerns like the Dollars trilogy. And we watched Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and we were both like, eh?
We were like,
right.
We're like, oh no.
Are we
is
bad?
It us?
Are we dumb? Like, yeah. So
we're not the biggest fan, folks.
Right.
But, by the way, Quentin Tarantino's favorite film, I believe, or one of favorite films of all time.
Go figure.
Okay, Vin, looking at these scores, looking at this weird kind of array of week we had, anything you want to touch on, comments, anything?
Not looking forward to Blue Beetle next week.
Yes.
But we got Blue Beetle, so I was actually thinking about maybe doing like what we did for the Morpheus episode. Not that I think Blue Beetle is going to be like really bad, but I was thinking about just doing another like bad superhero episode, maybe.
Well, there's plenty there. There's plenty to work with. If you want to get the Westerns going, no one's going to say no. Maybe some people don't like it, but I like it over here. But also, Vin, thank you so much for sitting down with us, rating these films for us. Folks at home, we're going to run it down one more time. We have The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance with an 84%, Django from 66 with 52%, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with a 77, The Last Voyage of the Demeter with a 50, and finally, Gran Turismo with a 56%. Folks, thank you so much for listening. We got some great content in the future for you. We'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you just had to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you receive from us. We're looking to build this into something large and great, folks, but we want to be independent from those corporate sponsors, so we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.